Hi class, welcome to our fifth week of school. I just wanted to hop in here, and before I film our lecture for the week, I wanted to talk about a couple of things that are going to be happening this week. First of all, I would like to let you know that I have graded all of your communication theory papers. I think you all did an incredible job in answering all the questions that the prompt required and explaining the theories to the best possible ability that you have, which all of your papers were really, really good. Everybody did fairly well in the midterm as well. What I wanted to go over is basically the assignments that are going to be coming up for this week. So as you can see for this week, you actually have 3 chapters that you have to read that are not part of the textbook, which are outlining the speech, introductions and conclusions, and delivery. For this particular chapter, what you're going to be doing is that you're actually going to be reading these chapters from a public speaking textbook, and then you are going to be answering discussion post number 7 based on that. So the reason why we have these extra readings is because our textbook doesn't have a section on public speaking. So I am kind of supplementing the information that we'll need for that section. So that's what those chapters are. So as you can see, we do have a major assignment coming up the last week of school, which is next week, which is the cultural artifact speech guidelines, which is exactly what I wanted to get into right now. So when we're talking about a cultural artifact speech, it's a type of informative speech that we use to kind of introduce the class to an object that is very important to a particular culture. And this kind of ties in what we talked about during week 4. During last week when we started talking about culture and all of that, we talked about what a culture is. And basically you are going to be looking at the definition of culture, and you are going to be picking an object, artifact. It could be anything from clothing, food, musical instruments, something that you keep in your home. It could be anything from that sort. You're going to be picking one of those objects that represents one of the cultures that you belong to. And again, from what we talked about in week 4, a culture doesn't necessarily have to be attached to your nationality, ethnicity, or religion. It can be, but it doesn't have to. So you're going to pick an object that represents the culture that you wish to share with us. And you're going to tell us about that object and how it connects with that culture that you belong to. Your speech is going to be 3 to 4 minutes in length. Make sure that you stay within that time limit. You will also be using this external tool called Flipgrid. I will attach a video at the very bottom of this week's module. I will attach a couple of helpful links that can teach you how to use this app. It's really easy. Honestly, as soon as you log into Canvas and you click on the assignment, it will take you to Flipgrid. Obviously, you do have an option to use Flipgrid on your phone or a tablet if you want. And I also will be attaching that in the module at the very end of this week. So basically, in discussion post number 7, you are going to be submitting your topic to me so that I have an idea of what you're going to be discussing for the speech. And you're going to be using a bullet point outline to kind of like discuss the points that you're going to be going over. And at the very bottom of this page, I actually do have how I want the outline to be done. You have to use some type of visual aid because you are going to be using Flipgrid. You obviously Flipgrid doesn't allow you to share screen. So you are going to have to use some type of visual aid. It cannot be anything technological such as PowerPoint or anything like that. You can use your tablet to pull up a picture, or you can use your cell phone to do so, or you can print out a picture or have the object itself. Any of those are great visuals. You just can't use anything that's technological that will require you to share screen because Flipgrid doesn't allow that. You are going to need a minimum of at least 1 outside source to support your speech, and you are going to have to include that in a works cited page. You are going to prepare the speech in advance, rehearse it, and you're going to deliver it for the class using the Flipgrid app. So like I mentioned to you before, you do have like an outline format that I require you to use. So for the introduction, you're going to do the attention getter, introducing the topic, your main points. For your body paragraphs, your first body paragraph is like telling me what the object is, describing it to us and its functions. Main point number 2 is why the object is important to your culture, and that's where you should include your source. And lastly, why is this object important to you? What's the purpose of this object in your life? Why did you choose this object? Why is it important to you? And in conclusion, summarizing the points that you went over and ending with a powerful statement. I will see if I can find you a sample of a good cultural speech to also attach at the end of the module this week. Hopefully I can find one that will be a good example for you all. But that's basically what we are going to be doing, our last major assignment that's going to be due next week, at the end of next week. So again, I just kind of wanted to go over the guidelines of the assignment. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to send me an email. So just let me know if you have any questions. So what I'm going to spend this week's lecture doing is just talking about the outline process in the speech. Please ignore chapters 9 through 11. That has like nothing to do with that. It's basically the same information of the documents that I posted online. But basically, I decided that for this week, rather than talking about the really short chapters, which are health communication and mass communication, which are pretty self-explanatory, I'm going to spend our lecture for week 5 on talking about public speaking. So for those of you who haven't taken public speaking yet, public speaking is a class that is required for college students to take. It's required for transfer, or even if you are already at the university of your choice, you're still going to have to take a public speaking course. It teaches you how to organize a topic, how to deliver it in front of the class, how to become more confident, how to manage your nonverbal language, etc. And obviously, the public speaking is an entire course that you spend an entire semester studying. But for the purposes of this class, we're just going to do a little snippet or an overview of what it's like. So today I'm going to go over what goes into an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. And at the very end, I'm going to give you a few tips on nonverbal language, on how to make sure that you deliver your cultural artifact speech in a way that is effective and it's engaging to the audience. So let's get started. So the objectives for today's lesson are, we're going to talk about the different parts of the introduction. The introduction has 4 parts, and we'll discuss what those are. We're also going to be discussing the parts of an introduction. The introduction does have 3 parts, and we'll talk about the function of those. And lastly, we are going to talk about transitional sentence and what those are. And we're also going to talk about what a main point is, where you get your main points, and what the purpose of those are. So let's get started. So let's talk about the introduction. So I don't know about you, but a lot of studies have demonstrated that human beings make up their mind about a person within the first few seconds or minute in which they, engage with that person. And that's why introductions are very important, because once you make a first impression towards a person, it's really difficult for you to change that perspective that you have on that human being. However, just because introductions are really important, just in general, it doesn't mean that in your speech they should be really long. Your introduction should be short and sweet. It shouldn't be more than 10 to 15% of the speech, which is literally about 20 to 30 seconds, depending on the time limits of the speech. It should be really short, straight to the point. Just give us an idea of what you're going to discuss in your speech, and then send us on our way. If you feel like you have to include a lot of information in your introduction, then your introduction is too long. All the information that is needed for the speech, you should be including it in your body paragraphs and your main points. Like I mentioned at the very beginning, the introduction has 4 parts. The first part of the introduction is an attention getter. So the first thing that comes out of your mouth when your time starts to deliver your speech is your attention getter. And an attention getter is basically something that is going to serve as a hook to get the audience engaged in your speech. Kind of like when you write an essay in which you have a hook, your attention getter for your speech is also a hook. You can use anything from quotes, from stories, rhetorical questions, startling facts, a joke. All of those things are excellent ways to open up a speech, because again, you will get the audience's attention, you'll get them hooked, and then they're more likely to stay focused on your speech. After your attention getter, the second thing that should be included in your introduction is your preview of topic. This is where you let us know what the purpose of your speech is. There's nothing worse than going through a lecture or going through a meeting or through a speech where the person who's talking, the speaker, doesn't tell you the whole point of the speech. That's why when you are delivering your speech, you want, as soon as you get the attention getter out of your way, you want to tell us what the purpose of your topic is. Like, what do you plan to accomplish out of this? So again, like in an essay, what's your thesis? Like, what are you trying to prove here? After that, in some speeches, depending on what speech it is, you will be required to have a credibility statement. Speeches that require a credibility statement are informative and persuasive speeches, just because in order for the audience to be able to stay focused and to find your information worthy of being listened to, you have to let us know that you are a credible individual. So your credibility statement is basically a sentence in which you let us know what makes you qualified to tell us about this topic. So for example, if you were to go to the mall and purchase, you know, a makeup product or a skincare product, and you know, you are at the store, you expect the person who's selling you that product to have tried it out or to have some type of experience with skincare to be able to suggest to you what to use, right? Same thing with your speech. If you're going to tell us about a topic or you're going to persuade us to do something, let us know what makes you qualified to give us that information or give us that perspective on a topic. Lastly, you should have your preview of main points at the end of your introduction. And this is where you let us know, kind of like when you write an essay in your introductory paragraph, the last sentence of your introduction paragraph in an essay is sort of like the topic sentences of the following paragraphs. That's exactly your preview of main points. You're going to tell us, first I'll talk about this, second I'll talk about this, and third I'll talk about this. And the key about main points, the preview of main points, is that they have to be stated in the order that they will come up in the speech. So whatever you say is going to come first, second, and third, that's the order that it should follow in your body paragraphs as well. So again, the introduction has 4 parts, should be really short and sweet, just get us to get the bigger picture of the speech, get us hooked into it, and then we can go ahead and jump into the information. Now, the conclusion is kind of like a mirror image of the introduction. It has similar elements, and the purpose of it is just to reiterate what you just covered in your speech. Now, a lot of studies have said that the first thing that people hear are the things that they're most likely to remember, the things that are most influential. Other studies say that the last thing that people hear is what's going to impact them the most. Again, the jury's out still on those 2 issues, but we want to make sure that we cover both bases. So that's why in the conclusion, we reiterate what we talk about in the speech and we kind of drive our point home. So in your conclusion, the purpose of it is just letting you know that the speech comes to an end. Again, I have been in several occasions where the speaker just ends their topic or their speech or just stop talking abruptly, that it kind of gives a bad impression at the end of the speech because you have no idea how everything came to an end. So you want to make sure that you signal that the speech is coming to an end. So you have a transitional sentence that says something like in summary, in conclusion, in closing, that let us know that you are going into your conclusion, you're coming to an end. You also want to make sure that you are restating your specific purpose or your thesis. Today I talked to you all about ... You want to make sure that we remember again what the main point, what the entire purpose of the speech was. You also want to restate your main points. You want to let us know what are those key ideas that you discussed in your speech and the order that you stated them in. And you also want to make sure that you close memorably. So anything that you use as an attention getter, such as a joke, a startling fact, a story, an anecdote, a demonstration, humor, any of those things that were used as attention getters or as hooks, we can also use them as closing statements. And it's really important for you to do that so that you leave us with a lasting impression that is going to help us remember your speech in the future. And again, you might think that this whole speech is really repetitive. Why do I have to repeat the same thing that I stated in the introduction and the conclusion? Sounds like a lot, right? But the reason being is that when we are talking, when we're delivering speeches, kind of the words go out and they go into the air, right? And people forget really easily because it's not in front of them, like in a written piece of paper. So it's important for you to be reiterating this information over and over again, just to make sure that the audience stays focused and remembers the important facts of the speech. So now that we talked about the introduction and the conclusion, let's talk about the body paragraphs of your speech, or where your main points are located. So in the body of your speech, you have your main points. As you saw when I went over the guidelines for the cultural artifact speech, you will be having 3 main points. One of them being your description of your cultural artifact, 2 being the importance to your culture of that artifact, and the last one being the importance of the artifact to your personal life. So those will be your 3 main points. So where the main information, where basically the meat of your speech is located. And these are the key ideas of the speech. Those are the 3 things that the 3, 4, 5 things, depending on how many things or main points you have. Those are the key factors that you want us to focus on when it comes to your speech. And all of your main points come from that thesis specific purpose statement, meaning that if in your topic or specific purpose, you say that you're going to persuade us that there have been alien sightings in the Santa Monica Pier, that means that all the main points that you're going to be discussing are going to be about alien sightings that happened at Santa Monica Pier. You're not going to be deviating from that. So they all come or stem from the specific purpose. Usually you should have it somewhere between 2 to 5 main points. Reason being is that if you have more main points than that, the audience is less likely to remember the information that you're putting out there. So when you look at the way that an outline is done in a public speaking class, we usually use what is the Roman numeral format, which basically is that all of your main points are in Roman numeral formats, like Roman numeral number 1, Roman numeral number 2, Roman numeral number 3, and then everything else, all the subpoints are in either letters or numbers. Obviously, for this particular speech, I am not going to be requiring you to do that because this is just a survey or an overview of the field. Obviously, if you were in my public speaking class, we do spend a lot of time talking about those outlines. We do outlining in class. We focus a lot more time doing so. So I expect the Roman numeral format, but for this introductory class, I really don't. But basically, just to give you an idea, is that all of your main points are Roman numeral, and then your sub points and your sub points are either numbers or letters. And basically, the thing when you're doing your outline is that all of the points that are of equal importance are going to be at the same level of your paper. So as you notice here, this point, right, because it is like the main point that I'm focusing on the slide is at the very far edge of the slide, while this one is underneath, which it kind of supports the one above. That's literally how outlines work. You either have your main point, and then whatever comes underneath and it's indented underneath is supporting the point previous to that. But again, this is just an introductory class, which means that I don't expect you to follow the Roman numeral format. But when you are doing the outline for your cultural artifact speech, you obviously are going to have your main points that are going to be the ones that are at the edge of the margin of the page, and then everything else that you use to support is going to be underneath. And you can kind of see that in the little template that I have posted underneath the guidelines. But obviously, as promised, I will be finding a speech that can be helpful for you all when it comes to outlining. The next thing that we have in body paragraphs are what are called transitions. So if you can recall what I did a couple minutes ago, when I said, now that I talked about the introduction and conclusion, let's talk about the main points in body paragraphs. That is a transitional sentence. Basically, what I did is I restated what I previously discussed, and then I told you what I was going to discuss next. That's the purpose of a transition. And again, a lot of students often tell me that they think it's really repetitive, that it's not necessary. But keep in mind, one more time, think about it. Words, people don't have your words in front of you. They're not likely to remember what you just said. And those transitions help us stay on track and kind of like tell us, hey, I just talked about this. Remember what I just did. Now I'm moving on to that. So transitions are either phrases or words or sentences that kind of tie the speech together. They are there to help us connect the dots for the audience in case they get lost. There are three different parts where you have to use transitions. One of them is when you have your introduction and you're about to move into your body paragraph. So when you are done with your previous main points, now let's get started. That's a transitional sentence saying that, hey, I got done with the introduction. Now let's move on to the body paragraphs. You should also have a transition between each one of your body paragraphs from point 1 to point 2, from point 2 to point 3. You should also have a transitional sentence between your last main point and your conclusion. Remember when I said that you are meant to kind of like transition into the closing, in summary. Recapping what we learned today. That is a transition from a body paragraph to the conclusion. So again, just because this is an introductory class, I don't expect you to have like really well done transitions, because again, we don't have the time to spend as much time on transitions as I do on my regular public speaking class. But just keep in mind that that's one of the things that you'll be learning when I take a public speaking class. And those are the main things that I wanted to talk to you about. Obviously, there are patterns of organization that you can use to put together your speech. And these patterns of organization help us kind of like choose how we want to expose our topic to the audience. There are different ones depending on the topic that you choose to talk about. The chronological pattern is usually good for sequential order. So for example, if you're telling us about a historical event, if you're telling us about a recipe or a process, this is an excellent pattern to use because it kind of like follows a sequence of steps. So for example, historical events, a process, a recipe can be greatly organized to the best benefit through a chronological pattern. The next pattern is called a spatial pattern. A spatial pattern is really good for the physical arrangement of objects, or if you're talking about space. So for example, if you were to describe Disneyland to a person who has never been there, you can say, you know, your first main point can be like, if you go straight ahead, you will see the Princess Castle. If you go to the right side, you will see Tomorrowland. If you go to the left side, you will see Frontierland. And that serves as the guide for your main points in the speech. Again, spatial pattern works really well when it has to do with spaces and proximity. Lastly, you have the cause and effect pattern. This usually is when you have a behavior that is caused by something else. So for example, you can talk about how texting and driving has caused teenage deaths and accidents, and you can explain why this leads to this result. This works well for informative speeches. The last one is called the problem solution pattern, and this is the one that we often use for informative speeches, not informative speeches, for persuasive speeches, just because it helps with the organization. For this one, you kind of like describe the problem, then you talk about the causes that led to the problem, and then you offer us a solution on how to solve the problem. Again, problem solution are specifically saved for persuasive speeches just because the format helps us organize your persuasive speech. The last one that you can use is a topical pattern, and this is basically you're just organizing your main points and subtopics that fall underneath your specific purpose, kind of like what we're talking about, like we were talking about in the beginning when you were talking about your cultural artifact. That one could be thought as a topical pattern just because you can change or you can switch the pattern of it around a little bit. Obviously, the very first main point has to be your artifact, but then you can switch around the importance to yourself and then the importance to the culture. So it kind of has those elements of the topical pattern in which, because they're all subcategories of a main topic, you can rearrange them in the way that you want. An example of a topic that would fit into the topical pattern are things to do at Coachella. Obviously, there are various amount of things that you can do, and you can choose to organize them from most important to least important. It is ultimately up to you. So hopefully this has given you a nice overview of what to do with your speech, how organization and speech works. Like I said, public speaking classes are commonly one of the most anxiety-provoking classes. And even though it might seem like it is like that, throughout the semester, students get better because we get a lot of practice. We have a lot of exercises. We have a lot of activities that make us get into the mindset and the mood of delivering speeches in front of an audience. And the way that I like to explain public speaking to class is that it kind of resembles learning how to ride a bicycle. Obviously, when you started learning how to ride a bicycle, you would fall, you would be scared, you would have the training wheels. And then little by little, you started practicing and you started to get a little bit more adventurous until you were able to ride your bicycle without those training wheels and without the help of somebody else. but it is also a skill that requires practice. The more you practice, the better that you will get at it. But once you have learned the skill, again, you're able to take back those skills and put them into practice whenever you need them. It just requires a lot of practice to keep it going and to become a confident public speaker. Now, a couple of things that I wanted to do before I end today's lecture is just give you a little bit of instructions on how to use your nonverbal language for your cultural artifact speech. One of the things that I want you to keep in mind is that I will be grading eye contact. You're probably wondering, how can you grade eye contact when we're delivering our speech through a video, right? So basically the way that you look at your camera is that you want to make sure that you're making eye contact with your camera and that you're not actually reading from your screen. If you notice, whenever I do my lectures, I do look at the screen, I do refer to it, but I'm not reading from it because I can move my eye contact back and forth. That's what I expect you to do with your speeches. If you, for some reason, need something to help you jog your memory, you can use flashcards, or you can just literally take a piece of paper, cut it into fours, and use it as a flashcard. So if you do need something to help you jog your memory, which in public speaking we do all the time, flashcards are the way to go. Don't have your outline in front of you. That's going to be counterproductive and it's going to make you read from it and your eye contact will suffer, which is something that I will be grading you on. So make sure that you're making eye contact with a camera and that you're not reading from the screen. Another thing that I'm going to be looking at is that I can hear you properly. Make sure that, you are speaking at a good distance, that you're speaking at a right volume, and that I'm able to hear you when I'm listening to your videos. I've had students in the past who have filmed through Flipgrid, but I'm not able to hear anything that they're saying, and they lost points because of that. Last thing is that whenever you're delivering your speech, you have to deliver your speech standing up, and you have to make sure that the screen of your computer is able to catch you from, halfway up your waist all the way up to your face. Obviously, you are going to have to tweak your computer a little bit, as you can see me doing right here, but you have to make sure that when you're filming your speech, we're able to see you from waist up so that we can see your gestures, your eye contact, and your face expressions. So those are the last instructions that I wanted to give you when it came to the speech. If you have any questions, you know how to reach me. Just send me an email. We can meet through Zoom. Just let me know whatever you're needing. I'm here for you. Cannot wait to hear what these speeches will be about. And I'm really excited for your topics. Again, like I said, if you have any questions, I am here to help you all. And I hope that you all have a great week. This is our last couple of weeks of the semester. So enjoy the best that you can.